Hi, I'm Danny Ramos, and welcome to this week's edition of Hispanic Speak Out TV, brought to you every week on Bright House Cable Channel 49, Tuesdays, 9:30 p.m. Before we start, I'm here with my co-host, Glenda, who I always call Lolita. But before we get into the conversation, I want you not to forget the Hispanic license plate. This license plate can be found in 360 DMV locations. You can put this license plate on your car. It says since 1513. It's the commemorative license plate celebrating the 500-year anniversary of Hispanic settling in Florida. All the proceeds from this license plate go to scholarships for needy Hispanic students. So get the plate on your car, orgullo ser hispano, and help Hispanic students. We also have the Lawyers Consumer Directory. On the cover is a lawyer called Matthews, and he's an injury lawyer. He's going to be on the show in the next couple of minutes with Glenda. We'll be talking to him. This book can be found in 167 stores throughout Central Florida, and it's free of charge, and it gives you great hints on issues that have to do with the law. So pick up a free copy, and also it has a list of lawyers that you may want to hire. So before you jump the gun and respond to any kind of a TV commercial without knowing what you're talking about or who you're hiring, get the book, take a look at a selection of lawyers who specialize in different fields. Get this book free of charge at any 7-Eleven store in Central Florida. Glenda, how are you?
I'm doing great. I can't believe you're calling me Glenda.
Glenda?
I'm not used to that.
Well, you know, I want to keep you off balance.
It's usually Lolita, and I have to fend
well,
that
I like
one off.
Lolita.
I know you do.
I like Lolita.
I know
I mean,
you
that's
do.
very exotic, and you know, it kind of fits you.
Exotic.
It kind of fits you. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well,
you came in to educate me on something that I never heard of before, and what's it called?
You've heard about it. Come on. You've been watching that European underground channel. I know you've been watching it.
I watch a lot of the European and Japanese and
exactly. I know. Well, the newest thing to come out across the media is LIBOR, and it's capital L-I-B-O-R.
Okay. And that's on the internet? You can Google
it's
it?
all over the internet.
Okay.
It's one of the biggest scandals that is going to hit the United States. Interestingly enough, they were trying to keep it from coming into the United States, because you know this is out of the UK.
Oh, it's a UK problem.
It's a UK problem, but it involves the US and our stock market. And they were so hoping that they could keep this out of the United States before the election year. Go figure, you know, because everyone's got to look good. Yeah. But they couldn't stop it from happening because the way that they do their legal process is much different than ours. They have parliament. We have judicial systems. So the parliament, they can move as fast, as quick as they want, and they've already started to depositions, investigations of our banks for what they call adjusting the LIBOR. And
but what is it? Tell me what's going on. What is it?
Well, basically, on my little diagram that you made fun of, it's the only simplistic way that I can explain it. It basically will affect employees on a federal, state, and local level, okay? Where they work for the cities, the government, so your librarians, your firemen, your policemen, your teachers, you know, and the judges. Okay. You see me smiling. And financial institutions as well, by the way, that work for these companies. And what it's going to do is affect pensions, mutual funds, the adjustable mortgage rates, where that falls into what I do, currencies, and derivatives. So any retirement that these people have put into, let's say you sign up as an employment, and then you say, okay, I want X amount of dollars to go into this fund or this retirement or this pension or 401k. What they basically did is they gambled on the stock market, just like they did with the mortgages. No different to securitizing these mortgages. And trillions were invested, because this not only involves the United States, but obviously the UK as well. And who controlled the rates? Let's guess. Who controlled the LIBOR rates? Well, the financial banking institutions and the representatives, so we're talking executives, made this decision to be able to control the LIBOR rate, okay? So what's happened is that they literally fudged numbers, and this is what the term they're using, fudged. So they adjusted these LIBOR rates in their favor so they could gain the most money At the time of its conception, of them putting the money into these funds, they adjusted so therefore they could make the money from their funds. The sad part is, because of the way that they adjusted this to benefit them, when these pensions come into effect down the road, what people don't know, most of that is gone. It's gone.
What do you mean it's gone?
It's gone.
In other words, if you were a government worker and you put money into this fund,
that was supposed to gain interest, was supposed to go and go up and safe. Yeah. No. No.
Okay. another catastrophe on
well, this is why they are basically saying that it's a scandal, because what people are not going to know until you get to that point of retirement, and of course they can see what's going on, you know, because they get their statements or whatever, I'm sure, that show what's happening, but what they don't know is all that money has been gambled, and what they thought they could retire on, you know, with cost of living going up, that they could literally live okay in these funds. They're not going to be able to.
Well, are you saying that the funds disappear?
There are some funds apparently that have disappeared. And to give an example, how much did JP Morgan Chase lose?
Well, the last time I heard it was 5.8 billion. 5.8 billion.
This is part of LIBOR.
Well, and I have a sneaky suspicion if it's 5.8 billion stated, you know what I mean? That's like, okay, we got to admit to some losses here.
Yeah.
How do we, you know, squash it and push it down so it's not the real number?
Well, they started out with 2 billion, and then now it's up. They started off
with 2 billion, and then 2 weeks later it was 5.8 billion. So I think that the real number probably is around 10 billion, maybe.
Well, I had a gentleman a year ago, because I'm pretty much, you know, people contact me out of the blue because they know I'm very passionate about what I do, and he gave me a heads up almost, I'm going to say almost 2 years ago, that they were going to come out with very small numbers, because if they really showed the true numbers, which now we're talking trillions, I mean, it's coming out. It's just, I don't know if Americans are educating themselves or not, but he simply said it's so much that if they really leaked it all at once, America would panic. The American people would panic.
Well, they almost did the last time.
Well, they're going to panic.
And nobody went to jail for it. You know, you know, the most amazing thing about all of these scandals, the people that we respected the most were bankers in this country. If you were a banker, you were above suspicion, because that's the guy who safeguarded all your money, you know, in the safe. You know, you trusted this guy with all your money.
Correct.
So these guys were beyond reproach. And in this era, and that was back when, now in this era, the biggest gamblers are not the people at the gambling casino, you know, putting money on red or black or 21.
Right.
It's the guy sitting
or the
behind
mafia.
the bank, or the mafia.
Yeah,
it's the guy in the bank.
Exactly.
He's the biggest crook in the country.
Absolutely. And
So,
you're right, and they haven't served time. And it's going to be interesting, because
I'm just simply amazed.
I'm going to tell you, there was, I don't know his name, I'm so sorry, and because I do remember reading about him. In about 2007 or 2008, he was a part of the SEC. He literally brought this to the attention of those to be in power about this happening, that they were adjusting these rates. But they totally disregarded him. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he may have even been fired. They may even let him go, because in my opinion, you know how I feel, they didn't want to have a whistleblower, you know, within that organization to say, hey, this is happening, what, 2007, 2008.
So what do you think, what do you think that the biggest fraud ever perpetrated in financial history, nobody went to jail? What do you think that, how is that possible that people walked away and these guys are giving themselves hundreds of millions of dollars in bonuses, and they walk away and their bank collapses?
It's worse than
it's
that.
It's like when that Enron thing started.
It's worse than that, Danny, because the money that was made off the backs of Americans, and I'm going to say this over and over again, because it was on the backs of Americans, of us investing our money and putting it where we thought it was safe, you know, mortgages that we thought were going to be safe, even though they were securitized. The biggest issue is they took all this profit, these trillion-dollar profits, and guess where the money is? Not here.
Yeah, it's abroad.
$32 trillion. They just came out with statistics this past Sunday. $32 trillion are now offshore. So even if an American went after, what was his name, Madoff, whatever, the crazy Bernie.
Yeah, Bernie Madoff.
You know, those people never recoup their money. Why? Because the money's not here. Same is going to happen with this. They're not going to be able to touch these banks or these pooling and servicing and these securitizations of...
Are you saying that Romney is a part of that?
Well, that's what I've heard. You know, I don't get into politics a whole lot.
Well, he has his money offshore.
Well, then
and he refuses. You know, that's another thing I don't understand. You know, I used to be a Republican, okay? I'm kind of now an independent. I'm a registered independent. I don't know where I belong. I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know where I belong.
I agree.
But you know, I look at the Romney situation. How is it that a guy running for president of the United States does not expose his tax returns?
You know, I don't know.
I mean, the IRS requires me to expose my tax returns. Okay, I have to maintain it for a number of years by law, and he is a candidate for president of the United States. Morally, ethically, by every standard, he should put his tax returns on the table for the last 5 to 10 years.
Well, because he's always got something to hide.
I didn't say that.
I did.
Okay.
I'm allowed to. But the bottom line is that what
and he actually gets, he might be elected. And you know, it's like,
because you know what I think. Here's why I think.
And he has his money offshore.
It's what I think is happening is so many issues come to the forefront. I mean, we just had a guy, the Joker, go into a movie theater and just blow away, you know, 12 innocent people and 70-something that were injured. You know, now what's the focus? The gun laws, the Fast and Furious. Then you've got Social Security, and then you've got the mortgage crisis, and then you've got now LIBOR. I mean, I think it's so overwhelming that people can't digest it. They're turning off, and they're just going.
And the other thing too is the proportion of things. You know what? The whole country almost collapsed financially because of a bunch of crooks that never went to jail because they're being protected. So what if a presidential candidate doesn't put his tax returns? That's small stuff.
Yeah, you're right. I agree with that.
Comparatively, everybody's getting numb psychologically.
I agree with you 1,000%, because you know, I'm on a lot of social networks and I do a lot of communicating because I try to reach out to as many people as I can to help them. And you're right, people are really getting numb. I mean, I was in like some kind of a political thing, which I shouldn't be in there, but I was. And they're talking about changing the corridor on the east side of Orlando, and I'm going, hello, you know, we have the highest homeless rate we've ever had in our country. You know, right now alone in the state of Florida, apparently there's 85,000 homeless children, and we're talking about changing the east corridor for better looks. You know, to me, it's unbelievable.
One of the things I'm seeing on TV all the time now is feed the homeless, children without food. I see commercials from organizations saying donate money to feed homeless people, to feed children without food. And I'm going, I'm sitting in America?
Yeah, because we used to see that for what, Africa and Haiti,
South America.
I mean, to sit
and now it's happening here
in our own country. I mean, to me, it's devastating. And I don't know if you know this. This just happened in Fern Creek Elementary. 59 elementary students that went to that school, they sought refuge because all the shelters were booked. They couldn't put them in, so Fern Creek Elementary took these kids in.
At the school?
At the school.
How come that's not on the news?
It is on the news.
I didn't see it. I mean, it should be all over the place.
It should be all over the place. It was in the New York Times. New York Times. No. They never put it on local channels. But because I'm always on top of that and I know what to look for, 59 of these children during the summer had to go and seek refuge to this elementary school. And the elementary school actually opened their doors, which to me was, you know, a blessing.
Well, we're in a lot of trouble, and what's happening is everybody's so busy scampering for their own individual survival, they don't realize that they're on the Titanic right now, and all the signs are there. All the signs are there.
And now they want to try to get eminent domain here in the state of Florida. That's the next thing. And talk about not having civil rights. You know, going through the New Jersey bill, every page, police, 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 police. What does that mean?
That means that they're afraid of civil unrest. That we're going towards a direction of civil unrest.
They can come in your house whenever they want because you're renting from the state. They can enter your home whenever they feel like it. You have no protection. It blows me away that this law got passed in the state of New Jersey. It blows me away. And now they're trying to move that down to the state of Florida.
Well, there's a lot of things going on. Here, we're also changing a little bit of the format of the show, okay? You and I will be, you know, talking about the same issues that we're talking about right now on every show with the lead-off. And then half the show is going to be dedicated to what people must know about legal positions, about legal vulnerability. So we'll be inviting attorneys here every single show to talk about how people can protect themselves and how people are vulnerable in the changes that are going on in society.
Be proactive.
Yeah. Now we just following our conversation, we have this lawyer called Matthews. He's coming on. He's on the cover of the Lawyers Consumer Directory, and he's an injury lawyer, and he's talking about things that that the laws are changing in favor of the insurance companies and against the people who buy the insurance. So he called it, what was the word he used?
Well, well, I know it was a PIP. It's something to do with the PIP, but here's a name. Sorry, I did write it down. There was an amendment to the
but I'm talking about he called it a fraud. Or he called
a scam.
He called it a scam.
Yeah, scam. Outright scam.
And isn't an attorney calling what's been passed in the state legislature for insurance companies a scam?
Yeah.
You know, so it tells you really, really what times we're in, that we have to protect ourselves. So this show, every show from now on, you tune in and we're going to tell you about the law and your rights. And it's not going to come from me, it's not going to come from Glenda, it's going to come from attorneys, the top attorneys that are here in Central Florida. So right after this conversation, and this guy is a very mild-mannered guy, he's very laid back, but his intellect is really, really something else. So what you have to do is, we're going to fade out and then fade in again, and then listen to this attorney and what he says, because he's going to be talking about your auto policy, your auto insurance policy, and how you're going to be paying a little bit less, but you're losing a whole lot of coverage, which he said was a bailout for the insurance companies.
That's what they need.
Literally a bailout.
$1 billion bailout.
$1 billion bailout. So we'll be back in a second. It's going to be a fade in, fade out. Boom.
Welcome back to Speak Out TV. This is Glenda, and today I have with me J. Michael Matthews, one of the top Central Florida lawyers, personal injury, also injury, Social Security, and wrongful death. Sorry, had to get all that out at once. He's been in our area for a long time. You can actually pick up one of these magazines in 170 7-Eleven stores around Central Florida. And he's here today to kind of explain to us something that has changed in the Florida Amendment to the PIP, which stands for?
The Personal Injury Protection part of your automobile policy.
And you gave a really good story of explaining exactly what that means, and using me as an example, being in a car accident. So I thought that was a good way to explain to our audience what that is.
Well, it's important to understand what the Florida no-fault law and the personal injury protection benefit portion of it has been for decades. And it's been usually a minimum of a $10,000 policy limit to be used to pay for your medical bills and any lost wages incurred as a result of an automobile accident, which is governed by the Florida no-fault law. However, this past legislative session, at the prodding of the governor, there have been some radical changes to this law. To start with, the maximum coverage has been reduced from $10,000 to $2,500. There can be instances where they will pay $10,000, but that is if the medical treatment is needed to save a life or save an important bodily function. But the vast majority of the cases are going to be limited to $2,500. And there are certain aspects of it that are very restrictive that I really wonder if our fellow Floridians understand how restrictive these are. The first one is that this policy that you've been paying a premium on probably for many years doesn't have to pay your lost wages or your medical bills unless you seek medical help within 14 days of the accident. And in my practice of over 30 years, I have found most people are fairly stoic, and they think they're going to get better, and they're trying to keep their job, and they try to keep working. And if that 14 days runs, and then all of a sudden they may have a problem with, say, 30 days later with urination or something like that, and family doctor suspects perhaps a herniated disc, and they go see the orthopedist, they're going to be told, they're going to be told by this company they've been paying this premium to for years and years that they don't owe them anything.
Well, that's interesting. Let me ask you this. I mean, what is 14 days? I'm trying to understand what is the theory or the idea behind 14 versus 30 days? I mean,
well, that's a very good question, and I don't think it's ever been adequately explained where they pulled out this 14 days. You also have to remember that for decades, PIP is pursuant to a contract of insurance. In the law, that's called ex contractu. And the statute of limitations was 5 years.
So obviously this is something, I mean, I'm just looking back into this, I don't really know a lot about it, but it seems like this is in the best interest of the insurance companies, who obviously don't want to possibly incur a lot of charges or fees with somebody that has that extra days of 30 days of having extra problems that may arise. I mean, is this lobbyist backed by the insurance companies themselves to change this legislation?
Well, I'll quote one legislature who is a medical care provider, and he stood up on the floor in Tallahassee and said that this was a bailout for the insurance industry.
We've heard that a few times lately in this economy.
They also have a provision that is somewhat inane, and that is the PIP, if you go to the doctor or the emergency room within that 14-day period and they diagnose a concussion, and later on, a week or two later, you develop some pretty severe back pain, they only have to pay for medical that is related to the concussion.
Like the original, whatever the original.
Whatever the initial diagnosis
was. I gotcha.
And I'm sure there are plenty of physicians watching this show that know that when you have several injuries as a result of trauma, one of them can camouflage and mask the other ones because it's so severe, and the doctors want to treat that.
Sure.
So this is a provision that makes no sense at all.
So there was actually a word that you used earlier before we started this interview, and saying that you felt this was somewhat of a scam, that this has happened. And I'm a little surprised that attorneys like yourself that do personal injury, and also the doctors, now that you brought that up, because obviously that takes business away from them, that takes away from your practice, I mean, possibly, because the people will not know that this change has happened. What initiatives were taken to actually maybe prevent this amendment to be what it is today?
Well, the Florida Justice Association, which is the lawyers that primarily represent the injured, they certainly opposed it, and there were several segments of the medical profession that opposed it, because the idea behind the Florida no-fault law is to facilitate the care, facilitate it. And
that's huge. I mean, that's got to be a huge part of the business.
And now I've had one physician tell me that he's, I know the governor is the job creator, but this physician, after the enactment of this law, is going to have to let go 20 employees.
Rick Scott is a job, what did you say?
He calls himself the job creator.
Okay, gotcha.
But my question when this law was being examined was certainly the premiums are going to go down, because the coverage in 95–99% of the cases has gone from $10,000 to $2,500. Certainly the premium.
Right.
And the response from the legislature and the insurance industry that in the immediate future they are not foretelling at any more than a 10% reduction.
Wow, okay. So now let me ask you this, does that affect a policy? Let's say I'm carrying a policy. Should my policy go down now that that $10,000 went to $2,500, or do the insurance companies still make their money?
They do.
Just like I was supposed to get $10,000. Perfect. I think it's just the way America works sometimes. It seems like in the financial world. So that doesn't change at all for the customer themselves, the insurance carriers.
No, I think that legislature got it right when he said this is a bailout for the insurance industry. In fact, some people call it a $1 billion bailout.
Wow, now that's extreme to hear that. Now this is just in the state of Florida. Are they trying to do this across the United States?
Well, there are other states that have no-fault laws, but frankly, what's going on nationally, I would defer to some of my colleagues in the Florida Justice Association who keep up with that to advise.
So how can you educate now that this law, this enactment, this amendment has been changed in legislation? How can you now reach out to people like me that get in a car accident. I mean, how are we going to get educated on knowing that this has changed and it's benefiting the insurance company, not us? How do we get educated on that?
Well, usually when organizations like the Florida Justice Association, formerly the Academy of Florida Trial Lawyers, try to educate, they are ridiculed as just a bunch of lawyers talking. And this has all been a very planned assault on the injured and the disabled. And you have to also understand, most of the time with most lawyers who represent the injured, most people don't run to a lawyer immediately after an accident. Like I say, most people are stoic and they think, I'm going to get better. And see the lawyer 30 days later, all he's going to be able to do is say, I'm the messenger of some very bad news.
Right. Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, I know I've fallen down before and I get right back up thinking I'm okay. And then days later, you really feel something. So there's got to be something to that. And it's just unfortunate to hear once again, I feel like, because I'm in the financing world and the mortgage world, that our civil rights are starting to be stripped as we keep going. I mean, it just seems like to me this is happening.
Well, in that regard, there's also a move afoot, and it has been going on now for quite some time. Most people that I know believe in the right to jury trial, the constitutional right, and there's a move afoot by the vested interests like the insurance industry to substitute arbitration for the right to jury trial. And here in Florida, the right to jury trial most of the time requires a mandatory mediation before your case can even be set for trial. So there's mediation is not a binding arbitration, but it's a form of arbitration that already is going on. The arbitration is a denial of the right to jury trial.
Well, I got to think with somebody with over 30 years of experience in the state of Florida, correct? In Central Florida? You've been here mostly?
I grew up in Central Florida and I've been practicing in Seminole County since 1972.
Well, I got to tell you, you must have a lot of experience in this law, and anybody would be really in the great direction to get your advice if they do have a car accident, if they do get into some situation. This 14-day thing's got me a little crazy, actually. Luckily, I haven't had an accident, so let's knock on wood on that. But again, if you guys want to learn a little bit more about J. Michael Matthews, he actually is one of the top Central Florida attorneys here in personal injury, Social Security, and also wrongful death as well.
And workers' compensation.
And workers' compensation. So he does a lot for the different types of law that you might be looking for. So remember, pick up one of these books in the 7-Eleven. There's 170 different stores that you can visit. And have a good evening, and thank you for watching Speak Out TV.